The sun blazed over Los Angeles, making the tinted windows of the black SUV gleam like a mirror. Sloane Hart adjusted her oversized sunglasses and tucked a loose strand of blonde hair behind her ear, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. Another letter had arrived that morning. This one wasn't like the others. This one had been inside her home. She swallowed hard as she stepped out onto the studio lot, the familiar hustle and chaos of the film set washing over her. Producers barked orders, assistants jogged past, and somewhere, someone dropped a tray of lattes, sending curses into the warm air. But Sloane barely noticed. Today, she wasn't just America's sweetheart. Today, she was prey. Sloane! Cass, her manager and best friend since high school, came jogging toward her, tablet clutched against her chest. She wore a tight smile, but her wide eyes gave her away. "Don't freak out," Cass said in a low voice, steering her off the main path toward a quieter trailer alley. "They upped security. He's already here." "Who?" Sloane asked, her voice rough from hours of pretending she wasn't terrified. Cass hesitated, glancing around. "Your new bodyguard." Before Sloane could protest, a tall figure stepped out from the shadow of a trailer. Sloane's first impression, unmovable. He was built like a fortress, broad shoulders in a plain black t-shirt, jeans, combat boots, sunglasses hid his eyes, and he had a jawline so sharp it looked like it had been carved out of stone. His short dark hair and stern expression completed the effect. Luke Maddox. The name clicked a second later. She'd heard it whispered in studio circles. Ex-military. Reputation for being cold, ruthless, and expensive. He walked toward her with measured steps, radiating quiet authority, the kind that made everyone in a 10-foot radius instinctively straighten their spines. "This is Luke Maddox," Cass said, trying to sound casual. "Luke?" "Sloane Hart." Luke stopped a few feet away and removed his sunglasses. His eyes were startling. Not bright, not particularly soft, but a deep, focused gray. They locked on her like a sniper's scope. "Miss Hart," he said, voice low and clipped, "I'll be handling your security detail until further notice." Sloane crossed her arms, resisting the urge to shrink back. "I didn't agree to a babysitter." Luke's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. It wasn't a request. Cass squeezed Sloane's arm. "It's only temporary, just until we catch whoever's doing this." Sloane's jaw tightened. Temporary or not, the idea of being trailed, watched, handled didn't sit well with her. She had built her career on independence, the brave girl next door who didn't need saving. She hated feeling weak. "Fine," she said, forcing a brittle smile. "Just stay out of my way." Luke said nothing, only nodded once. But something flickered behind those cold eyes, a whisper of something she couldn't read. The day passed in a blur of reshoots and press interviews. Luke was everywhere, a silent, looming presence, just out of frame. He didn't speak unless necessary. He didn't smile. He didn't look at her the way most men did, with hunger or awe or a stupid, desperate gleam in their eye. He just watched. Cool. Analytical. It should have made her feel safer. Instead, it made her skin itch. When night finally fell and the set quieted, Sloane retreated to her trailer, craving solitude like oxygen. She peeled off her heels, groaning as she collapsed onto the couch. A knock came almost immediately. Annoyed, she called out, "Come in." Cass poked her head inside, looking pale. "They found another note," she said quietly, holding up a sealed evidence bag. Sloane sat up straighter, a chill racing down her spine. Inside the bag was a letter, same jagged handwriting as before, but the thing that made her stomach lurch was where it had been found, inside her dressing room, inside a locked, secure space, where only Cass, the publicist Peter, and now Luke had access. Her throat went dry as she read the first line. "You're not as safe as you think, Princess. I'm closer than you know." "Who found it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Cass hesitated. "Luke did. He was sweeping the area." 100 emotions flared at once. Fear, suspicion, anger, confusion. Sloane shoved them all down. "Hard. Great," she said, standing up. "Exactly what I needed." Cass lingered, wringing her hands. "Maybe you should cancel the movie. Just take a break." "No." The word exploded from Sloane before she could stop it. She couldn't let them win, whoever they were. Cass flinched. Okay. I'll tell security to tighten the perimeter. Just be careful, Sloane." When Cass left, Sloane sagged back onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. The door creaked open again. Sloane looked up sharply, heart leaping into her throat. But it was just Luke. He stood there silently, studying her with that unreadable gaze. Are you here to tell me to hide under my bed? She snapped, harsher than intended. Luke crossed the small space between them in two slow strides and crouched down in front of her, leveling his gaze with hers. No, he said quietly. I'm here to tell you. I'll find them, and I'll make damn sure they never get near you again. Something in his voice, a low, dangerous promise, made her shiver, not from fear, from something far more dangerous. Hope. For the first time in weeks, Sloane let herself believe she might actually survive this. But even as that fragile hope flickered to life inside her, a darker thought crept in. What if the danger wasn't just outside? What if it was already standing right beside her? The city was a glittering sprawl below as the SUV carved its way up the hills towards Sloane's gated estate. From her place in the back seat, she watched the endless stretch of lights blur past, but none of it touched the gnawing unease clawing at her chest. Luke drove in silence. No small talk, no reassurances, just the low hum of the engine and the occasional buzz of his phone, alerts from security teams she didn't even realize she had now. Her life wasn't her own anymore. It belonged to fear, to suspicion, to him. You should move, Luke said abruptly, breaking the heavy quiet. Sloane blinked. Excuse me? He kept his eyes on the road. Your house is too exposed, too predictable. If someone's gotten inside once, they'll do it again. I'm not abandoning my home because of some lunatic, she snapped before she could stop herself. Luke glanced at her in the rearview mirror, face unreadable. It's not abandonment, it's survival. The SUV turned through the private gate and wound up her long driveway. Even with security cameras, motion sensors, and a guard posted at the entrance, Sloane's stomach tightened the closer they got. It didn't feel like safety anymore. It felt like a gilded cage. As the car rolled to a stop, Luke was out and at her door before she could move. He scanned the driveway, the front porch, the roofline, a living radar, always searching for threats. Sloane climbed out, wrapping her arms around herself against the cool night breeze. You're not staying, are you? She asked, trying to sound casual. Luke's gaze flicked to her, sharp, assessing. I'll be here, 24/7. Her heart did a strange little stutter. Outside? She asked, lifting a brow. Wherever you are. There was a finality to it, no room for negotiation. For a woman who had spent her life fighting for her autonomy, it grated at something deep and raw inside her. Without waiting for her agreement, Luke followed her up the steps and into the house. The interior lights blazed to life automatically, bathing the sleek modern decor in a sterile glow. It looked exactly the same as it always had, but tonight it felt like a stranger's home. Luke swept through the rooms first, methodically checking doors, windows, closets. His military precision was unnerving to watch, but a small part of her, the part she wouldn't admit even under torture, felt a tiny bit safer seeing him move like that. Still, the awkwardness prickled under her skin. This isn't exactly normal, Sloane muttered, leaning against the kitchen island as he checked the locks. Normal's a myth, Luke said, not even glancing at her. Great. You sound like my therapist. He gave a soft, humorless grunt. Maybe you should listen to them. Sloane opened her mouth to fire back, but a sudden flash of movement on one of the security monitors caught her eye. She stiffened. Luke. He was at her side instantly, following her gaze. The screen showed a figure, hooded, blurred, darting along the perimeter fence. Luke's hand was already on his gun. Get upstairs, he barked. Sloane hesitated. Not because she didn't want to listen, but because her body froze, the fight-or-flight instincts short-circuiting. Luke cursed under his breath and grabbed her hand, pulling her behind him as he moved toward the stairs. His grip was firm but not painful, grounding, even as panic surged up in her chest. Halfway up the staircase, Sloane wrenched free. Wait, what about Cass? Peter? They were coming over to go over press releases. Luke turned, crowding into her space. His body radiated heat, tension. They know the risks, they'll stay away if they're smart. You, he pointed at her chest, are my priority. The raw protectiveness in his voice nearly undid her. No one had ever said that to her before. Not her parents, not her directors, not the boyfriends who loved her fame more than her. Just Luke, the man who barely knew her, the man she didn't know if she could trust. Still trembling, Sloane let him shepherd her into her bedroom. He locked the door and pulled a heavy dresser across it in one fluid motion. Stay here, he ordered, pressing a second phone into her hand. Speed dial 1. Me. Speed dial 2, the cops. "Where are you going?" she whispered. His eyes softened, barely, just for a heartbeat. "Hunting," he said, and then he was gone. The next hour stretched into an eternity. Sloane sat on the floor, back against her bed, phone clutched tight. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind outside made her flinch. She hated feeling this way. Weak, helpless. She had played action heroes on screen. She had given interviews about empowerment and resilience. And now here she was, hiding behind a locked door like a child. Tears burned at the backs of her eyes, but she blinked them away viciously. "You are not broken," she told herself. "You are not a victim." The bedroom door finally rattled, not violently, just a quick code of knocks, 3 short, 2 long. Luke's pattern. She practically sprinted to let him in. He stepped inside, calm but tense, scanning her quickly before relaxing by a fraction. "They're gone," he said. "Who?" Her voice cracked. Couldn't see their face. Masked, moved fast, knew the camera's blind spots. She hugged herself, trying to steady her breathing. Luke hesitated, then, so slowly she almost didn't notice, he reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead. It was the first gentle touch she'd felt in weeks. The first that hadn't come with an agenda, a contract, a camera flash. Something inside her cracked. Without thinking, she pressed her forehead against his chest. Just for a second. Just to borrow his strength. Luke didn't pull away. His hands hovered at her back, uncertain, almost awkward, before settling lightly, grounding her. They stood there in the dim bedroom, breathing in sync, 2 people who didn't know how to ask for comfort but needed it all the same. Finally, Sloane pulled back. "I'm not leaving my house," she said quietly, stubbornly. Luke's mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he said, "Then we make it a fortress." And for the first time that night, Sloane realized something she hadn't dared admit. It wasn't just the stalker she was afraid of anymore. It was the way Luke Maddox was starting to make her feel. Unseen, protected, wanted. Not as a symbol, but as a person. And maybe that was the most dangerous threat of all. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall windows of Sloane's bedroom, casting warm stripes across the rumpled bed she hadn't slept in. Instead, she'd spent the night curled up in an armchair that Luke stationed just outside her door like some human barricade. Her body ached from the awkward position, but when she moved to stretch, a sharp reminder of reality caught her eye. Luke's jacket, slung over the back of a chair, his gun holster carefully placed beside it. A silent statement. "I'm not going anywhere." Downstairs, muted voices drifted up, Luke speaking into a phone in that low, controlled voice of his. She should have felt safer. Instead, a knot of unease twisted tighter. Whoever had tried to get onto her property last night hadn't been random. They'd known exactly where the blind spots were. They had planned for it. And that meant someone close to her, someone who knew her routines, her vulnerabilities, was feeding them information. Maybe even someone she trusted. Cass? Peter? Claire? The idea made her stomach turn. Sloane dressed quickly. Jeans, hoodie, sneakers. Clothes meant for running if she had to. Clothes that made her feel less like the fragile doll the world wanted her to be. By the time she padded downstairs, Luke was already moving through the house with ruthless efficiency, speaking quietly into his earpiece. "No changes to her schedule without clearing it through me first," he said. "I want a second car trailing. Undercover. No logos. Rotate shifts every 6 hours." He looked up when he saw her, his mouth tightening slightly. He ended the call and tucked the phone away. "You should have called me," he said, voice low. Sloane bristled. "I didn't realize getting dressed was a security breach." "You disappeared for 10 minutes. His jaw flexed. "I thought something happened." Something about his fierce protectiveness stirred something reckless inside her. The same reckless impulse that had driven her to trust him, to lean on him, when she should have been questioning everything. "Nothing happened," she said, softening despite herself. "I just needed a minute." Luke's gaze pinned her in place, searching her face like he could see every fracture line inside her. Finally, he nodded once. "Coffee?" The word was so normal, so achingly mundane, it almost made her laugh. "God, yes." He led her into the kitchen, a sleek, expensive space she rarely used except for photo ops. Luke moved with an ease that suggested he was used to making himself invisible in other people's lives. She perched on a stool at the counter, watching him move. "You don't really talk about yourself," she said lightly. Luke glanced at her over his shoulder. "Not paid to." "Come on, give me something. Favorite color? Childhood pet? A deep, dark secret? His mouth twitched, the faintest hint of a smile, there and gone in a heartbeat. Gray, he said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Gray? That's not a color. That's the absence of hope. It's neutral, he said. Practical. Sloane snorted. God, you're such a bodyguard. He slid a mug toward her. Their fingers brushed, a tiny electric touch that lingered longer than it should have. Luke straightened immediately, like he was aware of it too. I grew up outside Chicago, he said abruptly, almost grudgingly. 1 sister. Mom worked double shifts. Dad was a ghost. Sloane blinked. She hadn't expected him to actually answer. Are they? She started, then faltered. Mom's gone. Sister's married. Has a kid. Luke's face was an impassive mask, but there was something raw in his eyes. I don't see them much. Sloane swallowed around the lump in her throat. I'm sorry. He shrugged like it didn't matter, but she could tell it did. Maybe more than he wanted to admit. And you? Luke asked, voice softer now. Anyone you trust? It was such a simple question, and yet it gutted her. She thought of Cass, her manager and friend since she was 16. Peter, her publicist who curated every detail of her public persona. Claire, her stylist who had seen her cry backstage after brutal interviews. She should have been able to say yes. But after last night, the words stuck in her throat. No, Sloane said finally. Not really. Luke didn't look surprised. If anything, there was a flicker of something like, you should, he said. Everyone needs one person. Before she could answer, a loud buzz from the front gate cut through the moment. Luke tensed immediately, all business. Sloane's heart leapt into her throat. He checked the security monitor. Cass's familiar face appeared, blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, sunglasses perched on top of her head. Luke frowned. She's early, he muttered. We didn't schedule a visit today. Sloane's skin prickled. Cass would know her schedule had changed after last night's breach. Luke had told her team personally. Still, she forced a shaky smile. Maybe she just wanted to check on me. Luke didn't move to open the gate. Instead, he picked up the house phone, punching in a code that patched through to the intercom. Cass, he said, voice clipped. Who are you here with? There was a pause. Then Cass's voice, bright and breathless. Just me. Wanted to bring Sloane some croissants. Figured she needed comfort carbs. Can you buzz me in? Sloane bit her lip. Cass sounded normal. But then again, whoever was feeding information to the stalker would sound normal too. Luke's hand hovered over the gate control. He was watching Sloane, not the monitor, reading her reaction. Your call, he said quietly. The weight of it hit her hard. Did she trust her oldest friend, or did she listen to the fear clawing at her gut? After a long, painful beat, Sloane nodded. Let her in. Luke pressed the button, but not before discreetly signaling to another hidden camera trained on the driveway. Backup would be standing by now, watching. A calculated risk, a test. They waited in tense silence until the front doorbell rang. Luke moved first, positioning himself to the side of the doorway, invisible but deadly, ready for anything. Sloane opened the door. Cass stood there, radiant and harmless looking, holding a brown paper bag and smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. Hey, superstar, she chirped. Miss me? Sloane tried to smile back, but her heart thundered so loudly she could barely hear herself think. Somewhere, deep down, she knew. The real danger wasn't outside anymore. It was standing on her doorstep, smiling at her like a friend. And Sloane didn't know who she could trust anymore. Except maybe the one man she was supposed to keep at arm's length. Luke Maddox. The croissants smelled like butter and cinnamon, a homey scent that clashed violently with the rising tension in the room. Cass chatted as she set the bag on the kitchen counter, oblivious to the way Sloane flinched at every sudden sound, the way Luke stood silent and watchful in the corner like a shadow stitched to the wall. I figured you'd need some cheering up, Cass said, pulling out napkins. After last night, God, I can't even imagine how scary that must have been. Sloane managed a thin smile, her hands gripping the edge of the counter so tightly her knuckles went white. It was, she said simply. Cass's brow furrowed, her voice dropping into a concerned whisper. Do they know who it was yet? Have the police found anything? Luke answered before Sloane could, his voice low and professional. Nothing solid yet. We're pursuing a few leads. Cass turned toward him, a little too quickly. And you're sure she's safe here? I mean, the house wasn't exactly impenetrable last night. Luke's eyes hardened. Security's been upgraded. She's safer now than anywhere else. Cass flushed, looking away, and Sloane caught the flicker of something she couldn't name. Guilt? Fear? Something darker? She didn't want to think it, didn't want to know it. Instead, she forced a laugh. I appreciate the carbs, Cass. Honestly, it's been a rough night. Cass beamed, her smile faltering only slightly as she glanced at Luke again. There it was again, that unease curling like smoke under Sloane's skin. Actually, Cass said, as if she were suddenly remembering something, Peter wants to set up a press conference, show the world you're okay, reassure your fans, spin it into good PR. Sloane blinked. A press conference? Her stalker was still out there, maybe closer than she realized, and Peter was worried about optics? Luke crossed his arms, voice clipped. Absolutely not. We're not making her a bigger target. Cass opened her mouth, about to argue, but Sloane cut in. No press conference, she said firmly. Not right now. Cass hesitated, then plastered on another bright smile. Of course, whatever you want, honey. Sloane nodded, but the unease only deepened. Cass was pushing too hard. Why? I should get going, Cass said after a few more minutes of strained small talk. But call me if you need anything, okay? I will, Sloane lied. She walked Cass to the door, Luke trailing silently behind. As Cass disappeared down the driveway, sliding into her glossy black SUV, Luke's voice rumbled close to her ear. She knew about the breach before the news broke. Sloane stiffened. What are you talking about? Luke's expression was grim. She mentioned it happened last night, but unless she was here, she shouldn't have known yet. We kept it contained. Sloane's mouth went dry. You think she's working with? I think, Luke said carefully. We don't know who's feeding information to your stalker, yet. Sloane wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly freezing despite the warm morning air. You trust her? Luke asked quietly. I don't know anymore, Sloane whispered. I trusted all of them. I thought if I kept people close, if I was good to them, they'd be good to me. Luke's voice softened. You are, but sometimes people have their own reasons. Sloane looked up at him, searching his face for something solid to hold on to. And what about you, Luke? She asked, voice cracking. Do you have reasons I don't know about? For a moment, something raw flickered across his face, something that looked suspiciously like pain. I was assigned to protect you, he said hoarsely. That's the only reason I'm here. The words sounded official, distant, safe. But his eyes said something else entirely, something dangerous and devastating. Sloane's heart twisted painfully. Don't trust him, a voice inside her warned. Don't fall for someone who can leave you at any moment. But another part, the reckless, desperate part that had always gotten her hurt, wanted to believe him, wanted to believe in someone. Before either of them could speak, Luke's phone buzzed sharply. He glanced at it, tension locking his shoulders. What is it? Sloane asked, dread curdling her stomach. Luke's jaw tightened. Another note, delivered to the security office. No fingerprints. He handed her the phone. A photo of the note filled the screen, scrawled in jagged black ink. You can't hide her forever. I already know who will betray her first. Sloane felt the blood drain from her face. Luke caught her elbow gently, steadying her. It's meant to scare you, he said, but we're not giving them that power. Sloane stared up at him, breathing hard. Luke, she whispered, what if it's already too late? His hand tightened around hers. Strong, solid, warm. Then we fight smarter, he said, and we don't trust anyone. For the first time, Sloane realized something terrifying. It wasn't just her stalker she was running from now. It was the people closest to her. The ones she'd loved, the ones she'd needed, and the only person she could cling to in this unraveling world was the one man she couldn't afford to fall for. Luke Maddox. That wraps up part 1 of The Bodyguard Secret. Sloane and Luke's story is just heating up, and trust me, the twists, heartbreak, and slow burn romance are only getting deeper from here. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2, where secrets are exposed, hearts are tested, and everything Sloane thought she knew is about to change forever. See you in the next part.